You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Welcome back. Another edition of Leafs Morning Take. Zack Phillips filling in for Nick Alberga alongside Jay Rosehill, the best producer in the game. Producer Vic behind the scenes there. Today we'll be breaking down some McDavid overrated discussion. Lane Lambert hired as the new associate head coach, Rosie, not to be confused with the assistant head coach. Mitch Marner, PR debate, PR battle, but a couple sleeps away from game one, and Nick bails on us. He's out of here. I'm in. How are you doing this morning, Rosie?
Yes, Zacharias. I am refreshed. I got a real host in the seat now. We finally got rid of that bum. No, he's down catching some hockey. I'm kind of jealous of him. He's going to see game 1 and 2. Is he down there for both of them, crying out loud?
No, just game one, I think. Just
Okay.
game one, and then heads out to Edmonton.
That's good, man. That's awesome. We'll get firsthand account on the atmosphere, but no, it's weird. I got my Masters mug going this morning because I'm in spring mode with no hockey for like a week straight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know. I feels like I forgot about what it's like to sit down and watch playoff hockey, this extended rest. And they did it in the NBA too, Rosie. I don't know if you follow along with that at all, but they have this like 7-day break between their conference finals to their finals as well. Now we're sitting here, NHL games wrap up on the weekend there, and we have to sit and wait and ponder. And I feel like that just gives us a good opportunity as Leafs fans to sit around and talk about everything going on with the assistant coaches, who's staying, who's going. And of course, the best conversation that every single person wants in Toronto is Mitch Marner. And are we trading him? Is he coming back? It just gives us more opportunity to bring that stuff to the surface. But on the topic of the Stanley Cup Finals, I did want to ask you, you get this extended rest. It's not like one team's going to have an advantage over the other here, where someone's sitting and waiting for the other team to finish. What are we expecting into game one here, where both of these teams are just sitting back and have had this time to, I guess, rest up, get some guys back to full health if they haven't been, or illnesses, whatever it might be? You go into game one of a Stanley Cup Finals, you're expecting this overwhelming intensity. Is it going to be that? Are we going to get a little bit of a feeling out process? Is there going to be some staleness going into game one? Just how do you kind of prepare for that after you've been sitting and waiting for so long?
Yeah, well, first off, like no one's going to limp into the series, which has happened in the past where teams just go through, say, a conference final and just get the crap kicked out of them. And by the time they get in, and if it goes to game 7 and they kind of limp into the finals, and it's happened where it's like, well, this team ran out of gas. This team was too banged up. You see their injury report afterwards. It's like, yeah, they ran out of gas. And that not that injuries heal quickly if there are real injuries, but just the fatigue factor, just the common bumps and bruises and strains and your little groin things and stuff that's getting banged up. You can really heal that up in a month. Just the stuff that's hurt, not injured, right? So they'll get their replenishment. They'll be fresh. On the flip side of that, when you don't play for an extended period of time, you got to kind of go get your footing, your timing back. So I think that the game, they'll be coming out hard with energy because no one's out of gas. But it's going to be interesting to see who goes out and takes the momentum off the start and who sets the tone. I imagine Florida's going to come out and play their style of just wave on wave of super intensity. And obviously Edmonton's going to have their MO as well. And theirs relies more on, getting the chances to the big boys, getting the puck to McDavid and Draisaitl in the important parts of the ice, and having their D actually, be in position and play the way they have been this playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see who takes a stranglehold. I've been waiting for it, wondering myself. I haven't put any bets on the series yet because I want to see, that first period on who comes out and who's feeling what.
I've got a bet on this series, Rosie, but it's not necessarily the series itself. Nick talked about it yesterday. I've heard some other smart people say it. I talked with Nick about it the other day when I saw him out here downtown Toronto. Surprise, surprise. Nick out at Greta Bar. That's sitting around talking about what we were going to be looking at for this series, and it was Connor McDavid to win the Conn Smythe. I mean, if the Oilers are winning this series, you're going to tell me that there's going to be anybody else on Edmonton who's the best player to lead them over that hump, including the body of work that's being put together throughout the first 3 rounds? I think it's Connor McDavid, like plus 200 we found on that. And you find the Oilers to win the series plus 128. like that just seems to be the best place to get the number and to approach the series for myself, at least. I saw this tweet the other day. This popped up, and Rosie, you're familiar with going viral yourself there, but I don't know if you saw this viral tweet. Min Dariwal had tweeted out there, and it's a quote from an article from Greg Cote, a writer down in Florida. Unfortunately, the article is behind a paywall, but tweets out this quote: McDavid is overrated. Boom. He puts up big, impressive stats. Yes, fine. But should he really be called, in quotes, generational, called the best player in the sport, when in 9 seasons he has yet to lead his team to a cup? I think this might be one of, if not the stupidest arguments in professional sports. I understand it adds to your accolades. I understand it adds to your resume and just your overall reputation when people look back on you. But is there a single person in the entire world, media, fans, coaches, peers, who are going to look back at Connor McDavid and his career and say, no, that guy, he wasn't one of the best players to ever play the game because he didn't get a cup, especially in a sport like hockey where it is so team dependent? Is this not one of the stupidest possible comments for a guy like from Florida to be making ahead of a series against the Panthers here?
Yeah, well, I think that sums it up. It's a hockey writer down in Florida. I don't know his background or anything, but it doesn't seem he's very well versed in the game. Doesn't seem like he covers the game or watches the game or really understands the game. But if you're just going to put up, you look at Dan Marino, never got a Super Bowl, and it is a more of an individual sport where a quarterback can lead you to the promised land. He didn't have the pieces around him, didn't quite get it done. So do you automatically just say, oh, Dan Marino wasn't that great? He was overrated. No, a lot of things got to go right to win a championship, especially in hockey. He's been playing for what, 8 years, you say? And
Yeah.
he doesn't have a cup yet. And you look at the Oilers teams that have been around him, the way they've played. I mean, all you can do is look at his body of work and say, what has he done to help lead the team? And he has done everything you could ask out of a single player. And then to call him overrated because he doesn't have a cup yet. He doesn't have the 80s Oilers around him. He doesn't have the back-to-back Penguin championships trophies, and he's got himself into the finals right now. Like, just a stupid bad take. You could put together a 20-minute highlight reel video of Connor McDavid doing unseen things that would rival the next top 3 guys' highlight reel thing. It's a ridiculous take from a guy that's not very well versed in hockey, if you ask me.
Just on the topic of this Stanley Cup playoffs, how these two teams might match up here, Rosie. This question did come up earlier when we were kind of talking about the two teams preparing to play each other in the first round. JS asking, Jay, will Panthers forechecking expose the Oilers D? Just in terms of the matchup, excuse me, here that we're going to see in the first round, Rosie, are you expecting this to just be a little bit overwhelming for an Oilers defense? Throughout the course of the season, I think we had all kind of discussed the fact that they weren't the strongest group. You're kind of held up a little bit more by the top end talent that you have on the team. You managed to get through the Dallas Stars, who I think is the best all around team, who was going to be the most similar to Florida, but the Florida Panthers are a different level here. Is that going to pose some problems?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have their hands full. Everybody knows that. It's going to take a big buy-in from their whole decor, and Skinner's going to have to continue to play the way he has since he was put back into that lineup last series. And like I said before the Dallas series started and before this one started, like if the Oilers are going to hang in there, they're going to have insane efforts from their top 2 guys, McDavid and Draisaitl. Their D is going to have to play positionally sound, and Skinner's going to have to play awesome. And they all did that in the Stars series. No one gave him a chance, and they beat them like pretty convincingly. I mean, they won it at home in game 6. If you wanted to have a hiccup, you easily could have gone to game 7 and had yourself pucker up going, oh boy, but they didn't. They got the job done. And I think they're going to put more of a push together than people think. But if they don't have their game and if they're not ready for that attack of the Florida Panthers, I think they're the best team in the NHL. They're going to have their hands full, no question. But I want to see how they respond. I want to see how hard the Panthers put down on them, how physical they play, how on the edge they play. Are they taking penalties? What is the Oilers' response to it? How much are they going to play in each zone? It's going to be interesting to see. I don't know how it's going to go, but yeah, the Oilers are going to have their hands full. That doesn't mean they're going to be overwhelmed and dominated, though.
Yeah, I'm not as much worried about the Oilers defense. If you're going to look at these two teams matching up, I don't think it's the greatest. My concern will more lie with the goaltending and how they go head to head. Now, Stuart Skinner did seem to find something there in the series against Dallas, but He is liable for a decent blow up game here or there. He didn't have the greatest playoffs heading into the Canucks series, heading into the Stars series, seemed to find something within him. Is he going to be able to hold that together? Is this extended rest going to mess with the momentum that he maybe started to build up there? Those are some of the questions that I have when it comes to this series and what we're going to see out of these two teams. Last thing here, Rosie, you're more in it for this conversation than anyone else. I kind of have the outsider perspective where I looked at it from a Leafs fan side of things. In Toronto specifically, you're in Alberta there. Do you want to see the Oilers win? Do you want to see McDavid hosting the Stanley Cup with Edmonton? Or as a Canadian, do we have a duty to be cheering for other Canadian teams in the Stanley Cup final? Because I'll be real honest with you here. I don't think so. And actually, as a Leafs fan living in Toronto, who knows damn well that every single other fan base in Canada who would be watching the Leafs in the Stanley Cup final would be rooting against the Maple Leafs. I am not cheering for the Edmonton Oilers. In fact, I would like to see the Florida Panthers hoisting the Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, there you go. There's two schools of thought on this, especially out this way. There's a school of thought of, hey, it can be your second favorite team, even if you're a Leafs fan or if you're a Flames fan. If they're not playing against the Oilers, why not cheer for the Oilers? And then there's the other school of thought of, do you think the Boston Red Sox would ever cheer for the Yankees just if they're not playing against them? Like, they hate them. They want them to lose. They want them to fail. The last thing they ever want to do is see them have success or win a championship. So I get both, and you can cheer for whatever you want. I think Edmonton's pretty cool. Like, I grew up as a Flames fan. I now cover the Leafs and wish them to do well and would love nothing more than to see the Leafs win a cup. But when that's not happening, I look up to Edmonton and, their new building, what they got going on, the support they have, how loud that building is and how crazy it is up in Edmonton is wicked to see that kind of support. And for them to win it would be good for Canada, be good for Alberta, be good for all kinds of things. So I don't subscribe to the thing where I hate the Oilers so much just because I like the Flames. I can like both of them.
Yeah.
If they're playing each other, I cheer for the Flames. But I'm totally like, I don't know. I'm used to being invested in a team where I'm part of it. It's my life. They pay me. It's day to day, every little idiosyncrasy of that inner workings of the locker room. And you have so much invested in it. So to say I can't cheer for the Oilers because I hate them so bad, I don't have that much invested. I'm fine with cheering for the Oilers, but I understand why people can't do it. And I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I guess a little bit different perspective for yourself there. And that's fair. And I understand that for myself. Just going to be honest. Fuck the Oilers. Let's go Panthers here. Let's get a win. Again, myself, Zack Phillips, filling in for Nick Alberga here on the morning show. He is off to Florida for game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I do the Leafs Nation After Dark show right here on the channel, Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Make sure to be subscribed, like the channel, like the stream here today. Comment in the chat. Give us your questions about upcoming things, whether it be about Lane Lambert, if it's about the Marner contract negotiations. We want to see them there. We'll try to answer them throughout the course of the show here today. And remember, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast, make sure to visit LeafsNation.com. The opening segment is brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ. For a good time, find Greta, 590 King Street West. Weekly specials, live sports, over 60 plus arcade games. Let the games begin. Go big, go to Greta Bar YYZ. And Rosie, I'm sure Nick will be heading on out to Greta Bar in Edmonton when he makes his way over there for game 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs in Edmonton. I don't think that he'll be coming in lacking some alcoholic influence after he heads down to Florida for the first couple of games in this series. I'm sure he'll be spending some time out at the elbow room, bumping elbows himself. But Rosie, here in Toronto, we do have some news that's gone on. I mean, I was kind of worried when I got asked by Amel if I wanted to do the show here today. I said, yes, I will do it. But what the hell am I going to talk about? And thankfully for us, Lane Lambert hired as the associate coach here in Toronto. The associate, not the assistant coach. And that would be Dean Chynoweth on his way out of Toronto, and still one assistant coach remaining, one that I think Leafs fans will be sitting wondering, how the hell does this guy still have a job? And Guy Boucher, just considering what went on with the power play last year. As far as the changes that we see for this team, I mean, Lambert, he's 59 years old. He was fired by the Islanders in January. He spent 6 years with the Islanders, 4 as the assistant coach, 2 as the head coach. He's got 13 years of NHL coaching experience under his belt. Rosie, I kind of look at this. I don't think that this is something that puts the team over the top. I think you're very clearly building a certain style of coaching staff back there with Berube, with Lambert now coming in, just the way that these guys have conducted themselves. I like this hiring from the standpoint of, at the end of the day, this guy spent time under Barry Trotz's coaching staff. So I'm in support of it. I can't speak too much to Lane Lambert as a coach and the difference he's going to make here, but what are your initial thoughts on this hiring and what he does for the Leafs?
Yeah, it's not like it's a world breaking news or anything, but there is a guy, I don't know, is associate just below assistant? Is there a hierarchy there? This associate assistant, I've never really
Yeah, I
understood
don't.
it, to be honest with you. I don't know which one is which. I think assistant might be a little higher and associate not. I don't even know. But this guy I think is going to come in and run the special teams, definitely run the penalty kill. From what I gather, the way he runs the penalty kill is to be very aggressive. When you're killing the penalties, you sit in a box formation in front, whatever area or quadrant the puck goes to, that player flexes out to apply a bit of pressure and then sinks back when it goes out of his quadrant, and you kind of flex out like that. Under Lambert, I understand that if there's any kind of a 50 puck, any kind of a bobble, any kind of a loose action, everybody goes to their man and you try to outman the puck, even though you're short, and try to create that turnover and get it down the ice. And it's a much more aggressive penalty kill that he has done in the past pretty consistently and had fair success with it. It's not a world beater or anything like that. He's not like he's a guru or anything, but I do think that he's going to be doing that. And with our skill set and the guys that do kill penalties, I think it could end up being a positive thing where you overwhelm their power play, make them scramble, make them make bad mistakes, take away their time and space. All great and everything. I mean, the rip on that is that, you know, you can start running around getting out of position. Guys aren't going when they should. Guys are going when they shouldn't. Guys are out of position and you get picked apart, leave your spot open, and it's in the back of your net. So I don't know. The power play has got bigger problems. I'm not sure if he's going to run that or not. There's some question marks, but the powers that be think this guy's the guy for the job. They're bringing him in. Obviously, he's on the same page as the other guys, and you got to think that's their number one priority right now, is getting people in that are like-minded with the same idea of where this team needs to go.
I'm curious what you think about filling a bench with guys who all played in the league. I mean, Berube played a long time. He played for the Maple Leafs. Lane Lambert spent some time in the NHL here. We see a lot of former players now transitioning into assistant roles, getting jobs behind the bench, getting those opportunities. I don't necessarily think it makes you more qualified as a coach necessarily, strategy-wise, X's and O's. I don't think it necessarily puts you over the top that way, but do you think it has a difference on maybe a couple of things and culture, response in the room, the way guys buy into the message that you're sending? Like, do you think that there's a difference with having a guy like that who's spent time, they've played, then they've transitioned into the coaching role versus a guy who maybe just found his way up from universities, junior hockey, OHL, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there's schools of thought. Obviously, experience, mindset, what your MO is, what your message is everything, right? And if you get that from your experience as a player, that's great. If you don't, that's not the end of the world either. I'd be like Scotty Bowman, you can look at, wasn't the greatest player in the world, but he's the greatest coach in the world. Why wasn't Wayne Gretzky the greatest coach in the world? Because they're not necessarily go hand in hand. And you know, the guy on the show the other day that was ripping me, Farmer Dickhead or whatever his name was, he's like, how dare you say anything? You weren't a good player, so you can't say anything about Mitch Marner. It's like, well, then who can? Only an all-star in the NHL? Like, you take your
Yeah.
experience on what you have, that you have gathered information over your life, you have experience. What does that bring you? What conclusion does that bring you to? And, you know, Lane Lambert has experience as a coach, as a player. Like, those are all positive things for sure. And I mean, if you get someone in there who's played midget B and he's telling all these guys what to do, you could say, yeah, it's hard to, you know, give that guy the benefit of the doubt, but it's not it's not necessarily, you don't have to be the best player with 1,000 games in the NHL to have an opinion, to be a good coach, to have a good message, to know what it looks like. Sometimes guys are better looking from behind the glass of what's going on and analyzing it than they were when they were on the ice. That's totally fine too. So it's not imperative that you have to have a ton of NHL player experience, but if a guy does, that's a positive. It certainly doesn't hurt.
I have some clarification here on the whole associate versus assistant situation. The associate coaches are normally one step above a normal assistant coach and one step below a head coach.
Oh, so the
I,
associate's a little bit sexier, is it? Okay. All right. We just called them
I
all
think
assistants as far as I could tell, but weird.
that's the only way that I looked at it. I think it gives off a little bit of like The Office, Dwight Schrute, Michael Scott, assistant to the regional manager vibes, but associate coach nonetheless. Lane Lambert hired here in Toronto. As Craig Berube continues to build out his bench, there's one more question that remains, and I think it's one I touched on at the beginning that Leafs fans are kind of sitting there probably losing their minds at this point as we've seen these changes taking place. It's not as important as maybe the guys that go out on the ice and the off-season additions, trades, whatever is going to be made by Brad Treliving, but Guy Boucher remains on this bench and nothing's been done there. There's been no talks of anyone else coming in to replace him at this point in time. There's been no conversation about whether or not he'd be on his way out the door. And I think the biggest reason Leafs fans would be pissed off, maybe is the right way to put it, is just because of the production that we saw out of this power play when it came to the playoffs, or lack thereof when it came to the production of this power play. Do you think that Guy Boucher will get another crack with this team, get another opportunity under a new coach, in a new system, maybe a new environment? Or do you think that last season and what went on in that series against Boston was the end of the road for him?
Well, I don't see how that would happen. I mean, if you look at what went wrong and how did they lose, and a power play as potent as that one is supposed to be with all those star players, it runs at like 4.8%. It's like, it's abhorrent. It's absolutely, it just melts your mind trying to figure out how is that possible when you look at the other power plays clicking around. Like this team was built to be an offensive juggernaut, to be super skilled, to be specialists on the power play. So to have numbers that are not just like average for that group, but are abysmal, like they are the reason you lost the series in the first round. I mean, you have anything other than abhorrent numbers on the power play, and you're through. You're into the second round. So to look at the guy who was in charge of that, who set it up, who came up with the structure, and who came up with the mentality around that power play, and it's Guy Boucher. So if you're going to make changes, you're not happy with how it went, he kind of has to go, in my mind. You have to get a different voice. You have to get a different look. You have to have those players get rid of everything they were doing when they had those disgusting numbers in the power play and bring up some other kind of system, some other fresh look that would hopefully prevent that from happening again. Obviously, the players are, responsible for getting it done on the ice, but if you're making changes and it was as bad as it was, you got to think that the assistant coach who's running it would be on his way out too while you're making all these changes.
There's a couple guys' names who've been thrown out there at this time. The one that I've seen most commonly, I believe it was Nick here on the show that had brought up the idea of maybe him making his way over to Toronto, was Mark Savard. He's out there in Calgary. He's bounced around a couple of teams over the last 4 or 5 years here now in coaching positions. But he's a name that has been thrown out there as a possible candidate to move into a coaching role with this Maple Leafs team. Michael Kirkpatrick bringing up, thought Leafs were going after Mark Savard as well. That kind of seemed to be the thing. It's cooled off over the last week or so, I would say. I think maybe Lane Lambert just kind of took over the spotlight there. But Rosie, do you have any insight at all about Mark Savard, him as a coach? He was out there in Calgary this past season, but maybe the impact that he might be able to make here in Toronto, and if he might be the solution to this power play?
Yeah, is he or not? I have no idea. I don't know what the hell's wrong with this power play. You
Right.
start there and say, how does this group of men put up these kind of numbers? Like they were embarrassing how bad their power play was in the playoffs. And I mean, everyone talks about defense, everyone talks about goaltending and stuff, and those are the hallmark things of a good playoff team. But the Leafs just lose in interesting ways, man. And having like, what do you think the answer is? Going and getting more highly offensive players to like
Yeah, no.
to keep Marner and then keep putting more offensive tippy toe type of guys around there? Like, holy shit, that can't be the answer. But why is that power play so bad in the playoffs? It's such a head scratcher. And to bring in Mark Savard, is that the answer? I have no idea. He's not. It's not like he's this juggernaut guy who's he's not like this golden child who everything he touches turns to gold on the power play. Like, his numbers were at times okay in Calgary and at times not okay. People that follow the Flames say, hey, he's okay. Like, he's not a world beater, this guru that's going to come in and change the whole world in Toronto. I know that. If they hire him, will I be against it? No. At the end of the day, it's what's going on with those guys on the power play. What is the block? And to me, it's mental. How can you have that much talent on the power play and not even close to getting it done, but failing incredibly miserably? To me, it's mental. Like, I would honestly be looking into getting a sports psychologist or a mental coach. I mean, I think that was it Edmonton that had their psychologist on the ice afterwards?
Yeah.
That guy that was like hugging Skinner and stuff. And the only psychologist I've ever seen is a sports psychologist. And let me tell you, they can reframe things and put things through a lens that you're not really able to look at it. And you're kind of stuck beating your head against this wall. You're at the end of a one-way street and it's not working. You don't know where to go. You're frustrated as an athlete. And those sports psychologists can frame questions in your mind and bring things to light that make you look at it differently. And then all of a sudden you have this open avenue ahead of you. And then you feel different about going and performing. And they're really good at that. I would think that would be paramount in Toronto, of trying to get these guys over the hump of the mental block of what the hell's going on, specifically on the power play, because there's no reason for it. It has to be a mental problem. Like, you're physically gifted beyond anything that anyone could ever hope for. And there's like 4 or 5 of you out there who have the same gifts and talents, and you can't get it done inexplicably. And you look at all these other power plays that are just firing it off and having success. It's some kind of a block. I'd be looking in that direction before I would, think that Mark Savard is the savior of the power play in Toronto.
Well, here's the other thing, Rosie. You can bring in whoever you want. You can bring in sports psychologists. You can bring in new assistant coaches, head coaches, GMs. I don't care who you bring in. The conversation every year when we get to the playoffs seems to be that this team can't find ways to score goals. You can't find ways to outscore the other team. You get into these 2-1 battles, 3-2 battles, where it's just like you created all these opportunities, but you can't find a way to put the puck in the back of the net. And yeah, playoff hockey tightens up. It's generally lower scoring, or at least harder to score, I guess is maybe the better way to put it. But guess what this comes down to? You said it there. What are you going to do? Bring in more offensive guys? You're going to bring in more guys with this incredible Corsi who just skate up and down north, south, real fast, more Alex Kerfoots and Ilya Mikheyevs and Pierre Engvalls. We've done that and it didn't work and we didn't score goals. So then what are you going to do? You've got your Austin Matthews, Mitch Marners, Nylanders. You bring in some grit around them. And guess what? You're still not finding ways to score goals, but the identity of the team changes. So at some point here, the conversation might have to move away from who's the guy who's going to come in to run the power play and tell the offense the structure that they're going to play and how they have to go about things when they go out on the ice. And it might just come down to the big boys who get paid a lot of goddamn money, Rosie, scoring goals and finding ways to put the puck in the back of the net. Because at the end of the day, I walk away from every playoff series and I say, who didn't score? Who didn't put up the points? Well, it's the guys that we come away from and say, maybe we need to move on from that guy. Maybe we need to trade that guy. And that guy might be Mitch Marner, who's in currently a PR battle himself here right now. I know that they talked about it a little bit on the show yesterday with Nick and Stewie, but you and I haven't had the opportunity to kind of dig into this. So I'm curious your thoughts, because Pierre LeBrun spoke to Brad Treliving there about the whole Mitch Marner situation. He said, Mitch controls a lot of this whole thing. If there's a way to make our team better, we're going to do it, but we're certainly not going to make a trade just so we can pound our chest and say, look, we're different. I think that this is the right thing to say. The reality is, what else is he going to say at this point? He's not going to come out and just say, yep, we're trying to trade him, trying to move on from him. We don't want him here. He's not going to come out and say we're trying to get an extension done, because that can just swing right the other way. This is a PR battle. At the end of the day, that's what it's coming down to. What we saw between Mitch and his camp and the Dubas camp was a goddamn nightmare of two groups going back and forth, and one seriously winning that head to head and kind of swinging over and winning over the emotions of this fan base in their direction to kind of put the Leafs in a bad spot where they were cornered to only do one thing. We all know here that majority of the fans at this point kind of want to move on or really want to move on from Mitch and his camp because people are maybe done with Mitch and the way he is on the ice or his lack of showing up in the playoffs, or maybe people are just exhausted with what we see and hear from his camp throughout the course of the year and into the summers. But I think that Brad played this one perfectly and answered this question perfectly because he kind of just nullifies everything, neutralizes the situation, explains, hey, we don't have as much control as Mitch does in here. We're not going to just trade him for the sake of it, which can calm everybody's nerves in Toronto where they're worried about you're going to trade this guy, you're going to get pennies in return. And then they're also not saying, hey, we're going to jump out here and just sign this guy to an extension because we've got no other options, which I think calms the other side. So for me, this is a good play by Brad Treliving. I don't think it's necessarily a win. I think it just can calm everybody's nerves. I don't know if there's a different way to view this one here, Rosie, or if you see this one differently than I am right now.
Yeah, well, there's he didn't say anything magic. I know this is kind of a back and forth. It's kind of a PR battle. It's kind of strategy. It's what do you say to shine the light on this, but keep the ball in your core, all this bullshit. And you can get wrapped up in that and it can turn into a back and forth stalemate. Contract negotiations can get stale or it can be ugly. But at the end of the day, what did Brad Treliving do? He was just honest. He's saying we're open to making our team better. We're not going to do it just for the sake of doing it. Like you can put that whole storm away by just being honest. And I've always thought that that's the best way to create clarity. Just be honest. Like what is your MO? And that's what he did. And everyone's like, oh, that's a perfect play to keep it in your. It's not even a play. He just said, listen, if a trade comes along, we're open to doing it. But Mitch holds the power with his no trade clause. So it has to kind of go through him. And we're not just going to do it to beat our chest and say we're different. It's going to have to make sense for the team, but everything's on the table. You know, he didn't say, oh, we love Mitch, he's not going anywhere. He didn't say, yeah, we're working on a deal. Like anyone give me a call if they want a piece of Mitch, we're going to try to move him. And he's being stubborn. Like, no, just be honest. It is what it is. And he said it perfectly. And there's going to be jostling. And you know what? If Mitch wants to put his back up and say, you know what, I'm going to play my contract out and I'm going to walk to free agency and screw you guys over because screw you if you don't want me. In his mind, he thinks he's done everything right. And that's his MO too. So it could get messy. It could get tough because at the end of the day, Mitch does hold the cards and he is the one who is kind of being the scapegoat right here. And I kind of want to talk about that. People are saying we're Mitch haters and we're a Mitch, hateful podcast and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, this team has ran it back. This team has done it over and over again. And it has not worked with this core. You can say that. I've never said Mitch is a terrible player. I hated his effort in game 4. I thought it was embarrassing. I thought that to win a Stanley Cup, and when you look at what it takes, Mitch doesn't seem to have any of it in my mind. He's talented and he can put up points. Yes, I get it. But there's more to it than that. And since this team is moving on, they've got a new coach. They've got all these contracts. Austin Matthews isn't going anywhere. William Nylander isn't going anywhere. And John Tavares isn't going anywhere because who's taking on $11 million contract for John Tavares? Nobody. So he's going to play out the next one. If you want to change this group's identity and bring in different types of people, well, there's a salary cap. So you can't just do that, snap your fingers. You have to re-sign Mitch Marner. Are you willing to commit to him basically running it back for X amount more years? Like running it back last year might have been crazy. Committing to Mitch Marner for an extension, I think, is the ultimate crazy. You're just signing up for more of what you've seen. That's crazy. You have to change something. You have to mix it up, and you have to change something of value. You can't get rid of Alex Kerfoot and say, we're going to bring on all these all-star stud players that are leaders in the playoffs. It doesn't work that way. You have to get rid of a piece that's big to get anything in return. You have to clear up big cap space to provide room to bring something in. This team needs something else. This team needs a change. We can't keep running it back. So the only logical answer is to look at Mitch Marner and say, listen, your attitude in the playoffs, your production, you can crunch some numbers and say, oh, well, his numbers aren't like, that's fine. But when the smell test is in game 4, in game 5, in game 6, in game 7, does he stand up and earn his contract and rise to the occasion and bury that big goal and have that big 2-goal night? And the answer is no. They just dry up and they don't do anything. So if you're going to change the team and get away from that, Mitch is the only logical answer. And that seems to be what a lot of people agree with. But I knew that once the playoff sting is gone, we get into the off season and this time of the year, people are going to go, hey, wait a sec. I love Mitch. My kid has a poster on the wall. Like, why are they ganging up on Mitch? And this is bullshit. And he's a good player. And I like having him on my team. And sorry, I knew that was going to happen. People are going to soften on him. But at the end of the day, it's try to move Mitch Marner and change the face of this team, or run it back exactly as you've been doing the last 8 years. And I know which one makes sense for me.
Yeah, it feels like there's just too much of the same thing with this group at right now. And it's not that these guys aren't good players. It's not that they haven't acquired a ton of talent on this team to be here. We see that in the regular season, but we all have kind of come to realize that it takes something different. Like, if you're in the chat right now and you're talking here about, oh, Mitch Marner, it makes the team worse. You get rid of the guy. You get rid. Okay, there are certain aspects that it makes the team worse. You could agree with that. You're probably not going to get the point production out of the next guy who comes in. Like, it's not a 1-for-1, and whoever comes in here is just going to put up 99 points. Remind people who keep calling him the 100-point player. He's never got that, by the way. But just, you're talking about this guy who's, you're not going to just get that 1-for-1, and it's an easy swap. It makes the team better, or it changes the team in a different way. You're not looking to just change things for the sake of changing things, which is kind of what Brad Treliving there said as well. But you're looking to change the group. You're looking to change the identity. And this core, whether you like it or not, these 4 guys are the heart and soul of this team in terms of they're the 4 who make the most money. They're the 4 that everyone in the media, the fan base, and likely their teammates are looking to as the center. They're the guys who, the way that they play, they conduct themselves, are going to kind of push that throughout the rest of the group and have everyone else around them playing and buying into that. It's not been good enough for 9 years now. Unfortunately, it's not gotten them over the hump, and we've all just kind of seen it fizzle out the same way every single year. It's been the same thing. So why are we going to continue to push this and try to run it back? Like, that's the issue here for myself as well. The other thing that I see is, like, Cheese Wizard they're bringing up, it would be just as easy to trade Nylander than it is Marner. They both have no move clauses. How would we convince that it's Marner that we move and not 88? Rosie, I don't know. The way that I look at this one as well is, like, Marner has 1 year left. Nylander, we've just signed to an extension. For me, I look at back to the Montreal series. Nylander's being the most consistent or the most outstanding of those 4. Maybe you could look at other players on the team and say that they've impressed you more. But to me, if you're going to look at the core 4, he's been the most outstanding of them every single season in the playoffs. Look at this guy when he comes back from his migraines that he has to miss those couple of games. He scored the last 3 goals of the Leafs season. Like, this guy was the only guy who's able to score in game 6, in game 7, when it matters the most. It's William Nylander. And he signs his extension. He scores 40 goals each of the last couple of seasons. He's putting up points. I watch this guy, his attitude, he's meant to play here in Toronto. He's meant to handle this media. That's another bonus to William Nylander. And then the final kind of thing that I look at here when Cheese Wizard brings this up is William Nylander just signed his contract for 11.5 for an extended period of time here to stay in Toronto. You know how much money Mitch Marner currently makes? Almost $11 million. You think he's taking the same amount or less money than William Nylander on his next contract? You're out of your mind. Like, that's not happening. So his next contract is going to go up. And as Rosie brings up there is a salary cap, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not a soft cap. There's no luxury tax. There's none of that. It's a hard cap. So you're just going to sit here and you're just going to hand money out willy-nilly and pay everybody else. Guess what happens to the bottom of the team that you're trying to fill in players for? The talent level is going to diminish because that's how much you're going to be able to pay for guys. You can't get the talent that you need.
They've already done that. Right. They've already been here when we have all these big boys signed up to their almost 11 millions, and there's not enough room to surround them with talent, to surround them with, players that can make a difference in the playoffs and whatnot. It's too top heavy. And the people that say, oh, you guys are just hating on Mitch Marner, I love him, we should keep him, that's insane to get rid of Mitch Marner, he's a good player. They're only looking at it through that very singular lens. They're not thinking about the salary cap. They're not thinking about long term. They're not thinking about where they've already been. They're not thinking about chemistry of a team and the way things work together. Like, why on earth are they the second highest scoring team in the regular season and Mitch gets 99 points, and then when it gets hard and it turns to playoff hockey, friggin' drier than the Sahara? Like, why?
Yeah.
That is the identity of the players. That is the character. That is the grit. That is the guts. And like I said, you're already committed to these other guys. Austin Matthews speaks for himself. William Nylander was so on fire to start the season. You have to. And like you say, he shows up in big moments. He doesn't shy away from the media. He doesn't get pissed off, doesn't get his back up, doesn't slouch, doesn't bitch and moan and whine and poor me and, oh, fucking everyone. He doesn't have that attitude. And we have kept him. We've committed to him. So Mitch is the odd man out. And you have to change this team unless you're running it back to do the same thing, which, like, people are like, if they do move Mitch Marner, he's going to go and have success elsewhere and put up goals and score against the Leafs when he visits, probably. And the Leafs are going to do what they do, hopefully get better. But the second they don't win, everyone's going to go, see, you should have kept Mitch Marner and whatnot. It's like, but we already did keep Mitch Marner. We already had this group together. We already saw what happens when you put these guys together, and it's what it is. You can score in the regular season, but you completely dry up and you don't have any grit and you don't have any balls and you don't get through the tough parts of the area, and you fizzle out and find incredible ways to lose, like getting to game 7 against Boston, but running at a 4.8 power play and just losing by, a hair, and you're done playing. Because guess what? Mitch Marner didn't step up and take control of the friggin' series. And did anyone else? Not really. You could say William Nylander, like he scored the last 3 goals while we desperately needed him. Austin Matthews, I mean, you just don't get your hands on a player like that. He's extended. He's here. He's our franchise. So sorry, it is Mitch. And like you say, people that defend it don't really think long-term about the salary cap or the implications of that, or what you can build around him, what you could get for him, how you could change the identity of the team by moving him. Like, something has to change here. They already have ran it back. It's not like I'm guessing. We've already been proven. It's proven it doesn't work with this group. They proved it over and over and over again. We already ran it back just to make sure we couldn't say what if, just to make sure we couldn't say, but what if we ran it back again? We did. They ran
9
it back.
years.
They ran it back a whole bunch of times. People were crying for them to stop running it back 2 and 3 years ago. They ran it back. It's on paper. It's proven. This group doesn't work. You have to change it. Then you look at it a little closer. Well, how do you change it? You can't do this, that, or the other thing. The only thing you can do is try to move Mitch Marner to something else for some value, and to open up that room and try to change the identity of this team, leaving it in the hands of Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and whoever you get in return, and whoever you're developing on the side. It's the only direction you can go if you don't want to just keep beating your head against the wall expecting a different result.
Yeah, and Julian Altabelli here brings up a good point in the chat. You can date a hot girl and still decide to break up with her. You guys might look good on Instagram. She might have some good bikini pics, but when it comes to the actual meat and potatoes of the relationship, maybe it's just not there. Might be time to move on. And like, the other thing too here, in all seriousness, is like, people keep saying, oh, he's gonna find playoff success. He's gonna go to another team and he's gonna do really well. Maybe. But maybe that team has other star players around him who have a different mindset than him. Like, imagine this guy's thrown in and he's the wingman alongside Nathan McKinnon. It's just a different mentality for a guy playing as his partner or leading him in the charge than it is the guys like, and I'm not saying these guys are bad leaders or bad players, are not meant to do it, but like Matthews and Tavares don't have that demeanor. Leon Draisaitl, you got the quote of, oh, Leon, why are you so pissy? Well, like the way that the guy plays and the way he goes out on the ice and he's chopping people's fingers off, and like he doesn't care, like he gets in the battle, gets in the mix, and has that kind of demeanor to him. It brings a different atmosphere, it brings a different intensity, leadership to the team. It's just a different vibe, and not every superstar has that. I don't look at all of them around the league and say, hey, they all have that. That's why they're all successful. That's why they all play this way. But you just ended up with 4 guys in Toronto who all happen to have the same shared mindset.
Yeah, and it's this game, hockey, is so much a chemistry game. Does your team have chemistry? Like, how could the St. Louis Blues be dead last in January and then find something, change something, and go and win the Stanley Cup? How does that happen? This isn't tennis. You can't just put a whole bunch of highly skilled players and then just expect them to win because they're the most skilled. Back before there was a salary cap era, Glenn Sather was for the New York Rangers was just trying to buy a team. It was just outrageous. Just buy players, buy the best players. It didn't work. They didn't win a Stanley Cup. The Philadelphia Flyers were desperately trying to win a Stanley Cup. They give Chris Gratton $10 million in 1999 just because they needed a power forward as their last little piece of the puzzle, they thought. Bring in, doesn't matter. Just buy a team, buy the best team, get the best players in a room. They don't win the Stanley Cup. It's not about that. You have to find the formula that works. You have to find the chemistry that works. Sometimes a coach can get you that. Sometimes a player, a leader can give you that and can put the whole team on his back and create the identity. Sometimes you have a whole group of guys that just get it together, who are coached by Paul Maurice, and they become the Florida Panthers, and they just play with no passengers. Everyone's trying to find that. And what is proven to me, I don't know what the formula is for sure. I don't know. Nobody knows. But what I do know is that this group together is not the formula. You put this group together, highly offensive, 40-some million dollars for 4 guys, and we're supposed to outscore our problems, and they're running at 4.8% on the fucking playoffs. Like, sorry, the chemistry is not there. Try again. Well, hold on. We got to make sure these guys are all pretty good. We'll try it again. Same thing. Well, hold on. These guys are really good, and I don't think we've quite done. Let's run it back again and just make sure. Run it back again. Same freaking thing. So what are we going to do it again, or is it proven to you? You need a different formula. You need to change the chemistry of this team so that it has a different vibe, like I'm running out of adjectives to describe it, but it's a feeling on a team where everyone gets it. We have the same identity. We have the same mojo, the same MO. We're out there doing things together, pulling on the same direction, and this team's not doing it. And I promise you, move Mitch Marner out there, you're going to change the identity of that team, and you're still going to have a lot of unbelievably good pieces, but you're just going to have a different look that maybe is more suited for the playoffs or inducive to getting the chemistry going, because it is not there with this group. It's proven.
The other thing is, like, one of the top guys that we're looking at in the era being discussed for this offseason. Yeah, you're going to re-sign Bertuzzi. You're going to try to re-sign Domi, trying to re-sign Edmondson. But okay, now we're kind of getting into the conversation of same team as what we had last year. So now some of these other guys start bubbling up. Oh, Pesci, Brady Shea, Brandon Montour. How the hell are you going to sign these guys if you're bringing back and increasing the salary cap on some of the other people? You can't just add in the hard salary cap era. You want to bring in a guy like Brandon Montour. You want to pay him the money that he's worth because you think that's a guy who's going to change your team and put you over the top. Someone has to go. Someone has to go. It's the reality of the NHL and the hard salary cap. That's how it is. There's a potential here, Rosie, that we can't move Mitch Marner this summer. Obviously, we have laid out our opinions. People in the chat have laid out theirs. You go on Twitter, people are talking about it nonstop every single day. But at the end of the day, you might not be able to trade the guy because the right trade partner might not be there. The right fit might not be there. If you're looking at this coaching staff, do you think that there's the ability for Craig Berube to break maybe Mitch Marner and break the mold of his, not his play, because he's obviously an incredible player, but it seems to be that mindset, like you talked about, that change of attitude and mentality when things get tough, the most important time of the year, it just doesn't seem to be there. Can a guy like Craig Berube fix that? Can he change Mitch Marner and make him the player the Leafs need him to be?
Maybe. I mean, maybe, right? There's a chance that we will have to run it back. There's a chance we'll re-sign Domi and Bertuzzi, and Mitch will stay, and we'll make some outside adjustments. And I mean, are we going with Joseph Woll as the number one? Has that been decided? Or are you going to bring in, are you going to try to bring in an Allmark or a UC Soros? That costs money. You got to make room for that. Yeah. Or are you just going with Woll? And, that's risky. Are you just running it back with seriously? Like, yeah, I think a goalie is extremely important, and you can't have question marks or, worries going into a game wondering. I mean, he's a really good goalie. I don't know if he's ready to put the whole franchise and try to make a run with him with this new coach. I don't know. He's prone to injury too. So
yeah, longevity.
Are you running all this back and doing the same thing, hoping that Craig Berube can get these guys a kick in the ass and realize how they need to play hockey? Maybe, but it is risky. And I think it takes more than that. And I just think that, the way Craig Berube wants this team to play and the way Mitch Marner does play, I think they're kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Like Mitch doesn't drive. Mitch pulls the shoot all the time. He doesn't drive to the frickin' net the way other players do that have success in the playoffs. He doesn't. He pulls up and curls to the corner and then tries to make other plays that never seem
Well,
to work
Rosie, look
out.
what Nylander added to his bag. Look what he has done. Like we used to look at this guy peripheral. Well, watch him drive the net now. Watch him drive the net in the playoffs. He's not going in there and killing people or taking huge hits, but he'll go to the net. He'll drive with a little bit of authority too there. He's changed that. Like he made that adjustment is more what I'm saying. It's like Mitch, 9 years, that adjustment's not being there.
Unwilling to do so far. I mean, I would
Yeah.
love nothing more than for Craig to take this group as they are. I got nothing against Mitch Marner. He's a really talented hockey player and by all accounts a good guy. People like him in the room. People
Yeah.
I've never chirped the fact that he does the gritty or does things at his wedding. I don't care, man. He's younger than me. They are interested in different things. I don't give a rip. I care about how he plays hockey and I don't love the way he plays hockey. He plays hockey half-hearted and he doesn't do it with aggression or physicality. He seems a little bit scared and unwilling to get into the dirty areas. He seems a little bit scared to get hurt or go to a place where there might be some contact. So he stays to the outside and says, I'm skilled enough to not have to go into those areas and I can make the plays and have an effect on the game from over here without going into those areas. That's what he apparently thinks because that's how he plays. And it is clear that it's not good enough to win in the playoffs. So for that reason, I'd like to take your space that you command on this team, salary cap and otherwise, move you out and see what else we can do because you've proven that you're just not that player and we need those players. Can Craig Berube make him do a 180 and turn into this guy that's driving the net and powerful and forechecking and getting the puck first and taking the hit? I don't know. I don't really see it. I would love nothing more again than if that were to happen, but I don't think you can put all your eggs in that basket, cross your fingers, and go into another goddamn season with this same group.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say, just to kind of wrap that up on that topic, is like I get a lot of people in the chats and the post games or Twitter, whatever, being like, "Oh, well, you got to hold strong on this group because look at the Washington Capitals did. They held the group together and they got it done. Yes, they did. You know who else held the group together? You know who else had a really good team and got to conference finals, got to a Stanley Cup final, and they held on to their group. They held on to their core players, and they didn't win the Stanley Cup. And ultimately, now they're a lottery team, the San Jose Sharks. And it's nothing against them as an organization or the players that were there, but they had a belief in those guys. They had a belief in their core guys, as I think everyone around kind of did as well. And it's not like they were sitting there saying, we got to get rid of one of these guys like maybe we are in Toronto. But there's just another example of a team who held on to their group, kept trying, and it just didn't get there. And it wasn't the exact same carbon copy situation, but my point is more just, yeah, you're picking out the one example that did work. There are countless examples in NHL history of groups that didn't. So are we going to sit here and be on the wrong side of history and say, well, we tried and we kept them around and it didn't get there? I don't want to have that. I would rather take the swing. I would rather try something and it doesn't work as well than just hold on and look back when I'm older and say, wow, we had that team and we just had belief in the wrong guys, the wrong group here. I don't know.
Yeah, and it just they didn't have the chemistry to get it done. I look at the beginning of the season this year, and we're like, "Hey, we're running it back. Okay, we're running it back, kinda. Got a new GM in here, though. He's going to put some different pieces around here, and fine. And then you go through a year of mostly successful. You have your ups and downs, but you're top of the league, and you're second in scoring. And then you go into the playoffs, and you can't score a bloody goal, and we lose in the first round. Like, I just don't want to do that again. And we've done that over and over. We ran it back and we lost. And now that we're getting this different mentality, I really want the core to be broken up and bring in some other players, get Tree Living's fingerprints on this, not Kyle Dubas's. I want Craig Berube to run the team day to day and build an identity, not Sheldon Keefe this time. And again, I just want change. I want
Yeah.
change. I want it to be different than it is because I've seen what this is together and it doesn't have it. It doesn't have the juice, doesn't have the mojo, doesn't have the chem to get to the promised land or anywhere near it. So you have to make the changes. And I know they have in the GM and the coach, and that's great. And I think I just don't want to put my eggs in the basket of Craig Berube will make Mitch Marner play hardcore playoff hockey, and he will put up tons of points in the playoffs and lead this team to where it needs to go. I'm not willing to bet on that.
All right, with that being said, it's time for the Great Clips Inbox Question of the Week. With more than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada, Great Clips is the world's largest hair salon brand and official hair salon of the NHL. Salons are locally owned and operated and open 7 days a week. Your time is valuable, so use the Great Clips app to check-in app to see the wait time, check in on your phone, and get your hair cut when you want. There are a couple of great questions here for today. So let's start with it. Bruce or Vic did send these over. First question, and it'll kind of wrap up our Marner discussion here, Rosie. Mike St. Jean here says, can the Leafs let Mitch Marner walk for nothing, a la Matt Sundin? So we talked about trading him. We talked about the idea of the extension, running it back. But the kind of darker side of this whole situation is what Mike brings up. Can we let him walk? Is that something you'd be willing to do at the end of next season, if it comes to it, I guess?
What do you mean let him? You don't have
Yeah.
the power. He can show up to camp. He has a no trade clause. He has a contract.
Yeah.
He can show up to camp. He can play till the end of the season, and he can walk out of the building and never be seen again. He has the power to do that. There's nothing you can do about it. You can put him up in the,
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to try to flex your muscle or force his hand, you can put him in the press box. I hope we're not having that conversation, because then you're in shambles and you're the laughing stock of the NHL. But yeah, he can choose to do that. And it would be kind of screwing over the Maple Leafs if he gives any care to them at all. He'd be screwing them over. If you do that, what do you get? Well, you get the cap space that would otherwise be allotted to Mitch Marner to go work with. That's it. I would certainly like someone who wants Mitch Marner to give something up to us for him, and for Mitch to say, yeah, my future's not with the Leafs. I'm already thinking about signing with another team this summer. How about you move me at the deadline, put me at a contender, see if I can get a team over the top and go and win a Stanley Cup, and then have my stock through the absolute roof and sign for $14 million. That could be what he wants to do, and that would make sense. But he can absolutely screw the team and walk. And it's not about the Maple Leafs letting him walk. You can't force him to sign a piece of paper, right? What are you supposed to do? I don't want that to happen. I think it would hurt the Leafs, obviously, if you get a whole bunch of picks, prospects, a goaltender, anything in return for Mitch Marner, and open up his cap space. That would be preferable. But the power is in his hands, and it always has been since he signed that contract that says you have a no move clause. It means you play there as long as you want to. We can't kick you off the team. We can't trade you. So it wouldn't be the Leafs letting him walk. It would be him choosing to leave the Leafs empty-handed.
Oh, top tier comment here in the chat. X though says Marner is joining the new 3-on-3 league. My insider source told me. Saudi money, Rosie. Saudi money. Would you be gone to the 3-on-3 league with some of that Saudi money if they were offering it?
If I was at the end of my career and was a nice little payday before you left, absolutely. Just like the golfers, man. I hate where golf is at. I hate how LIV has fractured the league. I hate when you watch golf, no matter what you're watching, you're missing half of the good players. To have everyone together, it sucks. But when someone comes in with that much money, they can just disrupt an entire industry. And that's what the Saudis did with LIV and their $1 trillion, piggy bank. You can just disrupt the living hell out of it by paying people money they never thought they'd even see again. And I really hope that doesn't happen to hockey in this league. I don't think it's headed that direction, but I don't even want to have that conversation at this point.
All right, one more question here. Great Clips question. I think this is an interesting one before we get to our final segment of the show here today. Remember, for more information, check out greatclips.com. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Question from Blake Brim. What are your thoughts on the docu-series? What do you want to see? I'm excited about this. I saw the Prime Video came out here, Rosie. I don't know if you saw the list of players involved, but it's going to feature William Nylander and Austin Matthews, Jacob Trouba, Matthew Tkachuk, Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, Pasternak, Hughes, Eichel, Forsberg, Landeskog. Like, it's going to be a pretty fun series to watch. It's coming from the same producers as Drive to Survive, apparently, which I love that series as well. I love all the behind-the-scenes access, but what do you make of Matthews and Nylander being featured in this? And I mean, just from a transitioning from a player to a fan perspective, what are some things you want to see in this series that are going to be featured?
Well, I remember being a kid watching NHL Cool Shots, and once in a while you'd get like a view of the locker room or like back in the stick room, and I'm like, oh my god, there it is, like behind the curtain, like where it's all happening, the NHL, and it was so cool. And then that HBO 24/7 series came out. I thought that was so incredibly well done. It brought you right into the team. You're on the bus, you're checking into the hotel, you're in the hotels, you're going out to dinner, you have a day off, you've got a bag skate practice, you go to the rink when everyone's pissed off, you go to the rink when everyone's happy and you're flying high. You get the whole, immersed in the whole experience. I thought it was unbelievably done. Everyone's chasing the Drive to Survive Formula One series. They tried to do it with golf. I thought they missed the mark a little bit with golf, but it was not bad. I just hope it's really good, for the sake of entertainment value, getting a spotlight on our game, the league, give people access they don't otherwise have, I think is awesome. I don't care about that as much as I care about the success of the Maple Leafs. And I hope that it's not a distraction. I hope there's not cameras there 24/7. I hope the guy's not mic'd up the whole time. And it's just this whole outward distraction while the Leafs are trying to get on the page and do something special. I just worry about that a little bit.
Yeah, I love these docu-series. I think it can bring new eyes to the game. Like look what it did for Formula 1. Look how much it grew
Crazy.
that. And it's in a different zone, and it's a different environment, it's different characters, it's harder because there's more players, and you're not looking at 20 people that are competing in the sport, but to be able to have this access to these players and understand what goes on behind the scenes throughout the course of a season, I think is a really cool experience for the fans. It's something I grew up like the NHL 24/7s, man. I go back and watch those every now and then, just watch some of the clips from it because of how cool they are. Every time I see the Leafs put out the blueprint, it's like it doesn't matter my thoughts on the team or what's going on. I want to watch those because it's fun to see just that little bit behind what goes into the NHL experience that maybe we don't get as fans on the outside. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. But I mean, as far as I see people asking what's it called, I actually don't think it has a name yet. It's an Amazon docuseries that's coming out, and they just keep saying it's going to be like Drive to Survive. That's all we've gotten from it. So there's unprecedented access to these NHL players. That's all we've seen there. So I'm excited. But it's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. You can open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Rosie, we're 2 sleeps away from game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. The Edmonton Oilers heading out to Florida for game 1 there. Nick also down there. Maybe the better bet of this one will be over under amount of hours spent at the Elbow Room for Nick before he heads out to Edmonton, gets to Greta Bar. But is there anything you're looking at here for game 1 of this series taking place Saturday night that you're looking at as a best bet so far, or even series bets at this point?
Yeah, well, I guess I lied. I did put a bet down on this series. I put Bobrovsky and Draisaitl as Conn Smythe winners. Why? The value was better. I think Bobrovsky has the ability to absolutely shut the door and just steal this series. I think he could. I think he's ripe to do it. The timing would make sense of him just being like, all right, now I've got my little rest. I've got my focus. Shut the absolute door and frustrate this team. I could also see, Leon just being involved in every finish, in every play, and every power play that's potent. And just, you look at the numbers, it's like, oh my God, we have to give it to Leon, even though McDavid would be in on most of them. And McDavid's value is nil. So I picked that. As far as the game itself, game 1, the series, I don't know which way it's going to go. I don't have a feeling. I'm super interested in how it's going to go. And I want to watch that first period and see what each team is bringing to the table to start. They're going to present themselves and say, here's what we're doing in the finals. I want to see that in the first period and then kind of make a judgment on where I think it's going, because it's a toss-up, man. They're different teams with different motivations. It's a super interesting finals this year. I like it.
For game 1 here for myself, I'm looking at 2 things, and it's the exact same direction that I'm heading. I like first period under in this one, under 5.5. I feel like, at the under 1.5, excuse me, minus 105 in that first period. It's just, you're gonna get a little bit of the feeling out process. Both of these teams have spent all this time now. We talk about the rest. You get extra time here to video and prep for the other team, watch their tendencies, watch how they're going to come out, how they're going to play, all this stuff. It's just the extended time that you don't get in a lot of these other series as the players. The coaches are obviously preparing behind the scenes, but the players to sit down and watch this film, it's like they're going to be extra prepared. There might be a little bit of tentativeness in terms of that first period, just coming out, not wanting to give the other team the edge right away. Under 1.5 in the first period. The other one that I was looking at is the total in the game, the under 5.5, just for the whole game. If you're going to have that slower first period, I feel like it might not ramp up as quickly throughout the rest of the game. I feel like the intensity might, but you're also going to have Bobrovsky back there. You're going to have a really good defense of the Florida Panthers. And I don't think it's going to be easy to score on Edmonton as much as we kind of talked about maybe a weaker defense or Stuart Skinner potentially having a blow-up game. I don't see it happening in game one here. I feel like it's just going to be a little bit of a feeling out for both of these teams. So under in the game, under in the first period is kind of the way I'm heading.
I don't mind that. Yeah, I think they'll take a while to get their timing and their legs going. There will be a feeling out process. Edmonton has also killed like 100 penalties in a row. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I know.
Looking at as capable as both teams are of scoring goals, I don't mind that under 1.5 in the first period and under 5.5 in general in the game. I see where you're headed there, and it's not a bad play.
That'll do it for us here on today's show. I appreciate everyone who tuned in. Hopefully I stepped up to the shoes that Nick had left here, was able to fill those. Rosie, appreciate it as always. Producer Vic, the best producer in the game behind the scenes. Make sure to be subscribed here to the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. My show will be coming back in October. You're going to have to wait till then for the regular shows, post-game Leafs Nation After Dark. But in the meantime, make sure you're subscribed here, like today's stream. You're following us on all podcasting platforms, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you can find your podcast. And as well, visit theleafsnation.com. That'll do it for us here today. Reminder as well, I think Nick said it yesterday, but no show tomorrow. No show tomorrow. We'll be back next week. Rosie, Vic, thank you guys as always. The chats, thank you guys very much. Very active today. Some good questions. Some Marner love, some Marner hate, as to be expected. But thanks everyone for doing this. We appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thanks for joining, Zacharias. Good job. This might be a main. We might have a full replacement here. I'm on board.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it as always. That'll do it for us. Everyone, enjoy your day.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.